Alright, hey, what's up, guys? It's been a while, but I wanted to go over something. I was waiting for my webcam to come back. It's fine if it's not here. I don't need it technically to do these type of videos, so I wanted to talk about age importance in academy teams. So we've already had a year, and we're about to run into a next season of contenders of seeing how academy teams are going to do versus non-academy teams. Before, I think it was very dominant that most of the academy teams just stomped all the non-academy teams, and it was very clear. And then there was a few that were mismanaged, I'd say pretty badly, that looked like complete train wrecks of teams, but can't super blame that on the age. I think it was a lot of politics and really bad planning coming to some of the season, so some of the academy teams looked really bad, where I think they still had good players on them. So I wanted to look at these two teams, especially Fusion, who I think is the best run academy team, and it's very clear that if you're undefeated, you're probably doing a lot of things right. Besides having really good players and really good coaching, there's probably another X factor to like keep them above everyone else as like dominant as they've been, because not losing a single series for 3 seasons straight and winning the grand finals every single time in a somewhat dominant fashion is very impressive. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. Not only the factors of them having really good players, but in this case, they had a lot of young, experienced players that came into the team, which is the most important thing, I think, coming into academy. So last season, having players who were really young, like 16, 17, 18 was the name. Well, they had some 15 at the time, but that's basically their entire age bracket that they had, was that age group, compared to a lot of other teams that had a 23-year-old, 24, 22 all thrown about in there. And I think it's important that the age is smaller and lesser in this team than any other team that I've seen. So in Fusion, they've basically recruited people who were under 17 or 17 or just about to turn 18, and then that's basically what their whole roster was for season 1. When we look at the examples of the players, Who Are You and Elk are two of the biggest examples of they were young. Who Are You was like 14 whenever he started playing Overwatch, and whenever I think he was in the very beginning of Apex, he was either 14 or 15. So he has basically 2 years of competitive experience under his belt, and he just turned 17, and so he is in like the prime spot of being insane at the game, really young, so he has a lot of time to grind, really impressive as a player, so he has more time to grow under coaching, and like is primed for Owl. Also has all that experience of playing in Korea, playing in NA, playing against the best teams all the time. So he has like the whole package where he's an insane carry player, has all that experience, and is young, and is very important because a lot of these academy teams are looking to sell the players up. And as soon as they hit 18, you can see with some of the players that come off this team, a lot of them are getting sold, a lot of them are getting booped up to Owl, and it's very, very clear as to why, because they have so much experience, they're so young, they've been in a very good working system. So players who had previous experience, who were under 17 or 18 or 16, like around that age, were very good looking in the fact that they had the experience, so they can come into this team and just like skyrocket up, being surrounded by that talent. And then usually, I would say with other teams, in the case of Atlanta Academy, I think it's good for them in the fact that they had Dogman and Ajax who have similar experience but are a little bit older. So I feel like that was the case for most teams. It's like you have a 21, 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old as your veteran player who has the 2 or 3 years under their belt and doesn't necessarily need to be the carry player, but has the experience, is maybe a role player in the case of them. Ajax is definitely a role player on that team. Dogman was more of a carry on that team, but having a bit older of a player be that rock for the team, I think was more important for a lot of other teams. But Fusion being able to find those very experienced 17 and 18-year-olds that were great shot callers like Elk, who had a lot of experience, even if it all wasn't at the tier 1 level, because before he was playing on like EG at like lower, I'd say, I don't know what people would consider it, probably bottom tier 1 or like upper tier 2, where he was getting into like those tournaments with like the CLGs, the Liquids, but they were like performing like very poorly in them. But like in tier 2, they would just like shred everyone else because they were really good at that level. And then he got to move and he got to play internationally. And so he got the experience there playing with an international team. So I imagine he was in Taiwan, playing for Mega, and then after that he gets to come back to NA, so he has the international experience, which is really big for someone his age, and he gets to shot call and be a leader in this team where a lot of the other vets in other teams are much younger, or older rather, and then he gets to be the younger one, and then this team gets to basically build a really young roster with experience, and it's really clear that it's been a very good working formula for them, and that's basically been a very easy to see requirement for their team. Is most of the players, Chonsik is like the only one who's over 20 on this team, and even then it's kind of cheating maybe because he's Korean. They do age them up basically 1 year, because when you're born there in Korea, you're 1 year old basically the day after you're born, so it is kind of on the line there with like the Koreans. They're a little bit younger, I would say, technically, but you can basically see like the whole team, a big requirement of their team has been experience and being under the age of 18. So a lot of these players have grown and have been very crucial is that they're younger and they have a lot more time to spend, I would say, because I think that's very important for this org and a lot of the other academy orgs, is getting younger players who can spam play all the time, because they want the players to be insane so that they can sell them off later. I would say for a lot of adults who are in their 20s, like mid-20s, gaming becomes less important to them. Maybe it is still their focus point, and maybe it's still their career, but you can see that a lot of the older players have girlfriends, are starting to get married, maybe even have a kid. Like in CS, you can see a lot of people, they start, as soon as they get into their late 20s especially, are married, have kids. And it's just a factor that they will not play as much as these younger players. And so when you get them as young as they are, and especially for the case of Fusion, it is very important to like age them up. And so you get them when you're young, you play with this team for a year, and then you're at an insane age where you're 18, you have some of the best experience in all of Overwatch in the amateur level, and then you look like such a great prospect to go into Overwatch League. So, touching on Atlanta Academy, I think they did a very similar thing where I'd say their trio of young players is exactly what they needed to pick up for this team. I think having a core of Ajax and Dogman as your supports is very smart, especially for an academy team. Sadly, Dogman is an owl now. But having those two players be your backbone players and basically slot in some younger players who are up and coming, who have a lot of experience. So I have a lot of experience with Hawk and Sugar Free in the fact that they've been playing tier 3, tier 2-ish Overwatch for a long time, and then being able to slot them into this team with another young player in Saucy, who all have like basically a year of scrimming at like a decent level, and then they have even more time now scrimming at like a more medium to higher level. So they have some owl scrims, they have a lot of contender scrims, really slots them into this curve where it's like Hawk will hit 18 and he'll have 2 years of scrim experience. Saucy will hit 18 and he'll have 3 to 4 years of scrim experience. Sugar will hit 18 and Overwatch will be dead. But it really works in the system that they got a lot of young up-and-coming players who have a lot of scrim experience. I think that's the most important thing. They weren't just recruiting players who were 17, 16, who didn't have a lot of experience, but they have a lot of experience. So they started playing Overwatch when they were 14, 13, 15, and then they have that 1 or 2 years of experience scrimming or just playing a GM level, playing a lot of ladder, and then you slot them into these teams, and they're super young, and they're super grindy, and they'll play way more Overwatch than any other team that has a lot of players that are in their 20s or 23 or 24. And I think these teams are just really destined and built at the very start to be powerhouse teams that will grind, that will put in more hours than any other team. And I think it's very clear, especially with Fusion, to see that if you build a good team from the ground up and you have really strong pieces, it's really easy to dominate the amateur scene. And I think it doesn't look like that's going to change much. It looks like they're going to continue to dominate because a lot of their players are still really, really good, and it'll be very difficult to beat Fusion in the future.